On March 26th of 2022, the local government in the town of Nasu in the prefecture of Tochigi, Japan, sent a priest to pray, give offerings, and perform Shinto rituals over a rock on the side of a mountain. Why did they do this? Because the rock cracked in half, and they believe this means a certain 3,000-year-old fox demon is free to roam the world once again. You've almost certainly heard of the nine-tailed fox trope. Well, her name is Tamamo-no-Mae, Lady Duckweed, and she is one of Japan's 3 great evils. I'm not Aiden Mattis, and this isn't the Lore Lodge. Her early life is a complete mystery, but by the time she was first documented as legend, she was already over 900 years old and was a powerful sorceress. Her fox form is believed to be golden color with a white face, with magic on par with the gods of Asia. So how do we know she was already 900 years old, at least, by the time of her first appearance? In Asian myth, especially Japanese myth, kitsune, bakegitsune, yako, zenko, basically all manner of fox spirit grow an additional tail for every 100 years they've lived to a maximum of 9, that I'm aware of. By 300, the fox spirit gains the power of foxfire, which allows them to control and create wisps of blue fire at will. By 500, they gain the power of transformation and illusion, and by 900, their power is on par with lesser deities. But Tamamo's real skill was in bewitchment and manipulation, using her charm and femininity to gain control over powerful figures to suit her own needs.
Women.
Her first documented appearance is as the favored concubine of Zhou, king of the Shang dynasty, from 1075 to 1046 BC. Her name was Daji, and she had Zhou so infatuated with her that he would neglect his job just to be with her. And like a total simp, he would go out of his way to ingratiate himself with her. When she said she liked animals, he built her a zoo garden and filled it with rare birds and fauna. He ordered his musicians to compose and choreograph raunchy music to satisfy her tastes. He constructed a pond of wine and a forest of meat specifically for her, which enforced nudity, and he executed anyone who displeased either him or her. When one of Zhou's other concubines voiced her complaints about Daji, not only was she executed, but her father was minced and fed to Zhou's vassals. And Daji didn't let Zhou have all the fun. She reveled in torture and death. She was reported to have laughed at every execution. There's one story about her where she saw a farmer walking barefoot across a frozen lake, so she ordered to have his feet cut off to find out why he was so resistant to low temperatures. In another story, Daji performed a live vivisection on a pregnant woman just out of curiosity. And in another, she cut out the heart of Zhou's uncle, Bi Gan, to determine if the ancient saying of a good man's heart has 7 apertures was true. But where did these stories come from? Well, they come from the Feng Xin Yan Yi, the investiture of the gods, a 16th century Chinese novel chronicling the era and decline of the Shang dynasty, 1600 to 1646 BC. It's basically propaganda about how Ji Fa overthrew the Shang dynasty and became King Wu of the Zhou dynasty. Why would you name your new dynasty after the evil guy you just usurped? I haven't the slightest idea. She was supposedly executed by Wu on the advice of Jiang Ziya, and from roughly 400 to 600 AD, Daji was culturally believed to be the nine-tailed fox spirit, with shrines dedicated to her in her fox form being banned as illicit cults. Kinda based. It's also believed that the practice of foot binding started with Daji. Legends say that she hid her fox feet with the bindings, but the other courtwomen never really knew why and just started imitating her. After her believed execution in China, she showed up a few hundred years later in India, then called Tianzhu, in the kingdom of Magadha. She was called Lady Kaio and was the concubine of the crown prince Banzoku of the Ikshvaku dynasty. From what I could find, the Ikshvaku dynasty lasted until 362 BC and had 80 rulers, so it was a well-established dynasty. I also didn't try very hard, since I'm not a historian. I'm a weeb with an internet connection. So defer to someone with credentials and a CV you can actually trust for more accurate historical data. I just like myths and legends. And according to the Japanese legend, the fox spirit used her beauty and charms to dominate Banzoku and convince him to, quote, devour children, murder priests, and commit other unspeakable horrors. And eventually, whether she ran out of children to eat or because Banzoku began to turn away from her and towards Buddha, she eventually fled back to China. I couldn't find a non-Japanese source for this myth, and the story seems to be derived off of Kalmashpada, which takes a wildly different turn as it's recorded in the Sanskrit epic Ramayana. With an estimated first draft between 800 and 400 BC and a final draft as far forward as 380, it's a wild guess as to when this novel was actually written. So to me it looks like her little stint in India may have been a fabrication of Japanese myth rather than anything based on events of the region. But again, not a historian. Anyway, heading back to China, she appeared again as Bao Si. You might have heard of her. She was the concubine of King You of the Zhou dynasty from 779 BC to 771 BC. She was considered the most desirable woman in all of China, and she wasn't content with being a side piece, so she manipulated You into deposing his then Queen Shen and her son Yi Jin to elevate herself to the position of queen and see her son Bofu as the new crown prince. Bao Si is said to have been melancholic and never smiled. So You offered a reward of 1,000 gold to anyone who could make her laugh. At the suggestion of someone in the court, You lit the warning beacons of Mount Li, which were supposed to be used to call vassal state armies in times of need. But when the nobles and their armies arrived, they found themselves laughed at by Bao Si. You did this whole shtick enough times that the nobles just stopped responding because they hated him. So when the Marquis of Shen, the father of the former Queen Shen, decided he would overthrow You for deposing his daughter and grandson, You lit the beacons, but none of his armies answered the call because no one trusted it was a real emergency. You and Bofu were both killed. Bao Si was captured, and that was the end of the Western Zhou dynasty, as it was written in the Chronicles of the Eastern Zhou Kingdoms, one of the best-known historical novels regarding ancient China. And Chinese history says that Bao Si was bribed by the Marquis Shen to leave the capital and later hanged herself, while unable to escape an attack by another group. But Japanese myth says she somehow managed to escape and went into hiding. The next time she would resurface is in the 700s AD during the Tang dynasty, as a 16-year-old girl named Wakamo. Japan had been sending envoys to Tang China to learn Chinese culture and civilization since the early 600s AD, and Wakame tricked the party of Kibi no Makibi, Abe no Nakamaro, and Ganjin into allowing her passage to Japan as they were returning home. Once there, she went into hiding, again, for another 300 years or so. It was in the 1090s AD when she would once again resurface. She transformed into a human infant and hid on the roadside. A married couple found her and took her in as their daughter, naming her Mikuzume. She proved herself to be exceedingly intelligent and talented, and her beauty drew attention from everyone around her. By the time she was 7, she was reciting poetry to the emperor, who immediately took a liking to her and employed her as one of the servants of the court. She excelled in the court, because why wouldn't she? She was well over 2,000 years old by now, and had been a royal wife 3 times now. She was so knowledgeable there were no questions she could not answer, be it music, astronomy, religion, Chinese literature. Her clothes were always immaculate, she apparently always smiled pleasantly, and was said to be the most beautiful woman in all of Japan. In the summer of her 18th year as Mikuzume, a poetry and instrument recital was held in her honor, and during the recital an unexpected storm fell upon the palace. All of the candles in the recital room went out, leaving the place dark, but a bright light began to shine from Mikuzume's body, illuminating the room. The court was so impressed by her that they declared she must have been exceedingly good and holy in her previous life. The Emperor, Toba, who was already overly fond of her, named her Tamamo-no-Mae and took her as a consort. Which is exceedingly awkward because from the 700s AD to, it looks like April 2022, the legal age of adulthood in Japan was 20 years old. And almost immediately after taking her as a consort, Emperor Toba fell deathly ill. No court physician could determine the cause, so the onmyoji Abe no Yasunari was called. An onmyoji is a kind of amalgam exorcist of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. The exorcist read Toba's fortune and divined that he was marked by a bad omen. And the highest priests and monks were called to the palace to pray for Toba's health. To save his life, Abe no Yasunari prepared a Taizen Fuku no Sai, the most secret and powerful spell known to the onmyodo, and Tamamo was ordered to perform the ritual. So what exactly was this ritual? Well, it's basically just making offerings and praying to the gods to save someone. Why was Tamamo ordered to participate? Because they reasoned an evil spirit would not be able to participate in such a holy ritual. And while she was reluctant, Toba's ministers persuaded her, saying it would increase her standing and admiration in the court. So you bet her ego got her into it. The ritual was performed and Tamamo, dressed in her very best, recited the prayers and played her role extremely well. But when the ceremonial staff was waved, she vanished. Like, just gone completely. Abe no Yasunari's divination was confirmed and the court was in an uproar. Toba's sickness was caused by Tamamo, and now everyone knew it. Soon after, there was a report that women and children were disappearing near Nasuno in Shimotsuke province. The court sorcerers determined that Tamamo was the cause and elected to destroy her. Toba gave his best warriors the mission, their names being Kazusanosuke and Muranosuke. The men gladly accepted the honor, purified themselves, and set out to slay the demon with an army of 80,000 men. They found her quickly and chased her for days, but she would constantly use her magic to outsmart them, easily escaping. Weary and frustrated, it seemed like anything the army tried just simply didn't work. But Kazusanosuke and Muranosuke would not accept the shame of defeat and pressed on even harder. They honed their skills and tactics and eventually got back on her game trail. Then came a night when Muranosuke had a prophetic dream. A beautiful young girl was crying and said, "Tomorrow I will lose my life to you. Please save me." Muranosuke was adamant in his refusal, and come morning, the warriors set off on the hunt once again. Sure enough, the next day they found her. Muranosuke fired 2 arrows, hitting her in the neck and the flank. Kazusanosuke brought his blade down on the fox, and it was over. But it wasn't really over. Tamamo had managed to embed her soul in a stone called the Sessho Seki. The stone continuously releasing poisonous gas, killing anything that tried to touch it. But her evil really didn't die with her. A year after the event, the then Emperor Konoe, 8th son of the previous Emperor Toba, died at age 17 without an heir. Konoe was made emperor at the age of 3. The year after that, the former Emperor Toba, who had abandoned the throne to accept tonsure and become a Buddhist monk, also died. This caused a succession crisis between the loyalists of Emperor Go-Shirakawa, Toba's 4th son, and the loyalists to the former Emperor Sutoku, Toba's 1st son. This crisis started the Fujiwara-Minamoto rivalry that led to the Genpei War, which was an extremely violent and bloody nationwide civil war from 1180 to 1185 AD. It ended the Heian period of Japan and saw the rise of the military dictatorships under shoguns, which fed directly into the Sengoku period. I mean, yeah, the Muromachi period came next, but you gotta work up to the 100-year-long continuous civil war and social upheaval period that gave us the monsters named Oda Nobunaga, Hideyoshi Toyotomi, and Ieyasu Tokugawa. There are some renditions of the story that say Tamamo was the consort of Konoe, not Toba, but given Konoe's age, I don't think that's likely. And some renditions say that the onmyoji was Abe-no-Seimei, the single most powerful and famous exorcist in all of Japanese legend. But Abe-no-Seimei lived from 921 to 1005 AD, and Emperor Toba lived from 1107 to 1123 AD. So that's just over 100 years off. Shimotsuke province was changed to Tochigi prefecture, and Nasuno became just Nasu, and the Sessho Seki is a tourist attraction. Nasu itself is an area famous for sulfurous hot springs, so the toxic volcanic gas probably led to the whole fox demon will kill you if you touch a rock thing. There are other legends of nine-tailed foxes, both good and bad as far as I know, and I very well could be wrong, but none of the other fox legends actually name any of the foxes. And the only ones who'd really end up being talked about frequently are the Zenko in service to Inari no Okami. But if you're a nine-tailed fox in service to literally the most popular god in Japan, I don't think that god would be sending you out all that often. For real though, Kyoto Shrine with the excessive number of torii is Inari's primary shrine. There's also a Korean legend about a nine-tailed fox called Kumiho, but I'm no Koreaboo, so I don't know shit about it. Other than it's a thing and she might be super evil. Could just be another part of Tamamo's legend. There's some pretty large gaps where she's just MIA. But that's the story of a now 3,000 plus year old fox demon that might be on the loose again. Stock up on purifying salt and harai gushi. If you start seeing someone eating children, starting wars, and being a general power-mad menace to society, they might just be a fox demon in disguise. But they're definitely evil, 100%. Especially the eating children bit. That's some wood chipper business right there.